When I was young, I used to be a martial artist, and one of my favorite weapons was the bow staff. This is a weapon that, well, takes a little bit of space to use. Now, I ran down to Home Depot to get me a staff so I can pick up this practice again, but I quickly realized that the space I was in was too small or too occupied by the puppy there for me to adequately practice, to properly apply what I once knew to be true about myself, to continue in doing something that I once loved. I found with time and maturity that the battle between the things that we love and the things that we must do becomes tenser and tenser. And even if we get adequate at balancing these things, sometimes we end up finding ourselves hindered by the very lives that we built. This is the position that I found myself in, well, since the pandemic. Pursuing hobbies, pursuing passions, pursuing interests, even pursuing expressing myself, but finding that the life that I had built, the space that I've occupied and filled with my own pursuits, sometimes suffocates what used to come so naturally. And even as I'm doing here, you get real proficient. Like I said, you get real good at working in the space that you're given, at blooming where you're planted. But there's something about a change in context that reminds you of everything you've always been. And what a difference making space makes. all I want to say is like a living parable. Many times, especially me as a young man, I have felt stuck in spaces too small for me, and adopting the mindset of grow where you're planted, it's caused me to shrink as well. I begin to no longer embody the full range of my abilities, and even end up forgetting the full range of my abilities because I'm trying so hard to fit into a space I'm not supposed to be in, and or it's not most effective for me to be in. And I think about the prayer of Jabez that says, Lord, increase my territory, um, so I don't do any harm. And with all that I showed you, if my space was any smaller, if I was in the house, I might do a clip of that. If I was in the house, I would have destroyed everything. What was invigorating and freeing would have been destructive in another context. So as I think about me, everything that God has called me to, my effectiveness, my ineffectiveness, I'm beginning to wonder and explore the idea that possibly, it's not that I'm not good. It's not that I'm, you know, needing anything else. It's just that I'm not in the right place. I need to pray for God to put me in a space where there will be no harm for me to be all that I am. And like a note for men that try to be good men, are good men, but still put in the effort. I think there's this temptation almost to shrink yourself. Me personally, I'm not comfortable with power um, or dominating spaces. I've always seen that or heard that men in power equals tyranny or oppression. And it may not be true in every circumstance, but when you hear something, that's when you start to believe it, unless you have another thing that's stronger to um, rebuttal it. So, as I'm a young Christian dude learning how to live out the truth of the Bible, I have to grapple with this effect that power does not corrupt. Power reveals, power exemplifies, it gives you the ability to do something, but it doesn't corrupt. And in fact, God has designed me, especially as a man, to lead, to have dominion, to wield power, but not as one as the ultimate authority, because God is my head, Christ is my head, but and also not as one to oppress, to trample. I still have accountability for my power, but if I don't wield my power as a man, there are those, especially a man after God, there are those who are depending on the strength, the ability, the gifting God has given me in order for them to thrive. And this may be true of a lot of men listening. I'm just talking to the bros, whoever else is listening. But yeah, God has called us to lead, to use our power and ability to set other people free, allow them to thrive. It's something that must be done. So I'm grappling, even as like I have not done this in years, like decades, and it's still within me. Same thing goes for us men. We may be in a circumstance that caused us to forget or went through a shameful period where we're like, okay, I no longer feel worthy. But God hasn't taken back what He's given you. He's waiting for you to, like, look at this. What? He's waiting for you to submit to Him and then serve as He does. He didn't even come to be served. And He's like, if you follow me and I serve, you ought to serve as well. So, yeah, think on that. I had a good time. This was fun. Um, and I'm gonna let this serve as a metaphor to not feel, to not be, quote unquote shackled to a space, and allow that environment to speak about what God is doing in me. That's one. But also to remember that God has put something in me. It's to be used for His glory, and He hasn't removed it. It hasn't gone anywhere. So harness it to be a blessing, you know? Equip yourself with what God gave you and bless and serve and stand and protect. That's what it's saying to me anyway. Y'all let me know what this is saying to you. Anyway, peace and blessings. I love you all. Yeah. Peace.